In our previous lesson, we learned that proteins, which is a form of biological molecule and can be interchangeably called a polypeptide, is made up of amino acids. So, amino acids are the monomers making proteins, which are the polymers of these amino acids. When discussing these amino acids, we learned that there were 20 amino acids that are found within living organisms. These 20 amino acids can give rise to a variety of proteins, and since proteins are making about 2/3 of the dry mass of any given cell or organism, it makes proteins extremely important because they carry a wide range of functions within living organisms. The final structure of each protein tends to be a quite complicated or complex structure. But to make things easy, we've divided the structure of every single protein into 4 organizational levels: primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. Each level of organization follows some general rules which helps the protein achieve its functional form. The primary structure of a protein is actually coded for by the DNA. Primary structure is the name given to the level of arrangement in which we determine the exact amino acids that are making up a polypeptide and the exact order or sequence in which they are arranged. So, in other words, you can say that the specific amino acids that are arranged in a precise order is what is making up the primary structure of a polypeptide. And this primary structure, which is telling you that this is the first amino acid, this is going to be the second amino acid, this is going to be the third amino acid, this information is actually coming from the DNA. The DNA is made up of nucleotides. 3 nucleotides is going to be coding for a single amino acid. And this DNA molecule makes mRNA molecule. And this mRNA molecule is also an example of polynucleotide. And these 3 nucleotide bases, just like 3 nucleotide bases on the DNA was coding for a single amino acid, similarly, these nucleotides that are also found in mRNA, which are actually coming from what the DNA has dictated it to be. So the sequence of nucleotides of mRNA is actually going to be dictated by the sequence of nucleotides on DNA. And that's why whatever the DNA was coding for gets coded onto mRNA. Finally, 3 pair or a group of 3 nucleotides is going to code for a particular amino acid, and that particular amino acid is going to get attached to this growing polypeptide chain as this mRNA molecule is read along its length. So this AUG is coding for methionine first, for the first amino acid. Then AUC is going to code for an entirely different amino acid. And as this mRNA molecule is read further along, the next 3 bases, which is UCG, is going to code for a third amino acid. So notice how only a slight change in the bases is going to give rise to a completely different amino acid. Over here, this is also AUG, and over here, this is also AU, but the last nucleotide base is changing from G to C, and that ends up changing the amino acid from methionine to this amino acid right here. And therefore, it is basically the DNA and mRNA that is controlling the amino acid that is going to make this polypeptide, and not just the fact that this amino acid is going to make up this polypeptide, but also the order in which this amino acid is going to appear on the polypeptide chain. If this AUG was not present over here and was present as the third code on mRNA molecule, this methionine would not be the first amino acid, but rather would be the third amino acid. And in case that was happening, this would actually be a completely different polypeptide, and that polypeptide in which this was the third amino acid would have been an entirely different polypeptide. So, for example, Uh, if you take a look at the primary sequence of the first polypeptide chain, this is only a small section of that polypeptide chain. You notice that this primary sequence and the primary sequence of the second polypeptide chain is nearly the same. The only difference arising is in the fact that this is lysine and this is cysteine. So only one amino acid in this entire chain is changing. However, this polypeptide is a completely different polypeptide compared to this polypeptide, and these two polypeptides are not identical to each other just because there was one amino acid on the polypeptide chain that was not identical to this polypeptide chain. So a change in just one amino acid is actually going to give rise to a completely different polypeptide, and therefore the primary sequence of a protein is extremely important because that is going to determine the final properties of the polypeptide chain. Similarly, it's not just that the amino acids have to be different within a polypeptide chain in order to give rise to a different polypeptide molecule. Just the difference in sequence of those same amino acid can also give rise to an entirely different polypeptide. So if you notice, this amino acid is the same as this one, this is the same as this one, and this is the same as this. However, the order in which the first two amino acids were arranged has in a way flipped, and this has given rise to a different polypeptide over here and a different polypeptide over here. So, from this information, you can deduce that both the fact that which amino acids are making up the polypeptide chain is going to determine the kind of polypeptide that is being formed, as well as the order in which those amino acids are arranged in a polypeptide is going to determine the kind of polypeptide chain that is going to form. The arrangement and the particular amino acid that is going to be found within the polypeptide chain is going to determine the secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structures of the polypeptide, and therefore are going to give rise to very different polypeptides each time. For two polypeptides to be identical, they must have the same amino acids and they must also have the same arrangement or sequence of amino acids. So those amino acids have to be the same, and the order in which they are arranged must also be the same in order to produce the same kind of polypeptide. And since I just pointed out that it is the primary sequence that determines the structure of the secondary and tertiary and quaternary structure, if the primary sequence changes for a particular polypeptide, the secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structures will all change for that protein, and therefore it will give rise to a very different protein compared to the one that it was originally making. And this has very real life applications. So, for example, the DNA over here was actually coding for a normal hemoglobin, and in another DNA in which the nucleotide sequence changed from GAG to GTG. So instead of an A, now there's a T. That ended up giving rise to a new code on mRNA molecule also. And from there, instead of getting glutamic acid as an amino acid for the hemoglobin protein, it starts to code for valine in place of glutamate. So valine attaches in the position where originally glutamate or glutamic acid was present as the amino acid. Hemoglobin is actually a protein that is found inside red blood cells, and hemoglobin is made up of two polypeptides of beta chain. So beta chain is actually a protein also. So this is beta chain. Beta chain is the polypeptide, and hemoglobin is made up of 4 different polypeptides. We learn more about this when we're actually discussing hemoglobin and globular proteins. But so for now, just remember that hemoglobin is this protein that is made up of 4 different polypeptides, and beta chain is one of them. And this entire change where glutamate is being replaced by valine is occurring inside beta chain of hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is the pigment that carries oxygen and gives red blood cells its red color. Glutamate was actually a polar amino acid, whereas valine is a non-polar amino acid. And this particular polypeptide chain within the hemoglobin molecule is that for a beta globin chain. And this is a normal beta globin chain, whereas this is a defected beta globin chain because this amino acid glutamate was replaced by valine. And as a result, this is a normal red blood cell because it has a normal hemoglobin and beta globin chain. Whereas this is a sickle red blood cell, and this is not a normal red blood cell and is responsible for many diseases and symptoms inside the bodies of people that are suffering from sickle cell anemia. So, just a change of one amino acid from glutamate to valine resulted in a normal hemoglobin to turn into a diseased hemoglobin inside RBC, and that also ends up changing the structure and shape of red blood cell from this biconcave disc-like structure to this sickle-shaped structure for the red blood cell. But proteins are not the straight chain of amino acids only. They actually end up forming very complex looking 3D structures. But they're not just randomly arranged like that. They follow a series of regular arrangement in order to come into existence into this complex looking 3D structure. As soon as the primary structure forms for the protein, it instantly starts folding on itself to give rise to a secondary structure. And this occurs due to the interaction between the different amino acids that are making up that polypeptide chain, which is why the secondary structure of any given protein or polypeptide is actually going to be determined by its primary structure. The primary structure of any given protein usually tends to be a very long chain, but polypeptides need to exist in a small compact place, which is why these long chains try to fold up on themselves and form a 3D structure so that they end up taking less space than a long chain would if it was not folded. The secondary structure of a protein is actually dominated by the presence of hydrogen bonds. These hydrogen bonds actually come into existence because of the interaction between the COO minus group, which is the ionized form of carboxylic acid, and the NH3 plus group, which is the ionized form of the amine group. And this primarily involves the main carboxylic acid group and amine group that is attached to the central carbon atom of the amino acid. So these hydrogen bonds that are actually holding the secondary structure of the protein together is formed because of the interaction of this NH3 plus group and COO minus group present on the main chain of polypeptide and rarely on the side chains of the polypeptide. So it is the main amine group as well as the carboxylic acid group that is responsible for the hydrogen bond that is keeping the secondary structure of a protein molecule in its place. The two most common secondary structures found within a protein are helix and beta pleated sheets. A helical structure comes into existence when the straight chain of polypeptide is actually folding on itself and forming these spiral structures.
Quick pause. If you're finding value in this explanation, there's so much more to discover at Alt Academy, where we break down every A-level concept with the same clarity. Now back to the video lesson.
The spiral arrangement of this straight polypeptide chain that was a result of primary sequencing of amino acids is actually held in place by hydrogen bonds. A variation of a simple helix is actually an alpha helix molecule. The alpha helix molecule is unique in the sense that in an alpha helix molecule, there are 3.6 amino acids per turn of the helix. So there's going to be one amino acid, a second one, a third one, and nearly about half the amino acid before this chain of amino acids actually turns and then repeats the entire process, then there's going to be about half of that amino acid that was present at the turn, and then there's going to be the first amino acid, second and third, and then it's going to turn again. And similarly, so each turn of this alpha helix chain will have 3.6 amino acids. And so every helix will not be an alpha helix, but all alpha helixes are obviously going to be an example of helix. On the exam, sometimes the examiner may confuse you guys by calling the hydrogen bond a hydrostatic bond. If they mention hydrostatic bond, that is the same thing as a hydrogen bond. Another commonly found secondary protein structure is a beta pleated sheet. Initially, when a helix was forming, this straight chain of polypeptides or the straight chain of amino acid was folding on itself like a spiral. But when a beta pleated sheet forms, this straight chain of amino acid is actually folding on itself somewhat like this, as if like you've dropped a ribbon on the ground and it's twisting and falling on itself and folding upon itself. So both the beta pleated sheet as well as the helix or alpha helix are all held together by hydrogen bonds, which is why they are an example of secondary structure, because these structures are held in place by hydrogen bonds. But the hydrogen bonds within a helical molecule is going to be parallel to the structure of the helix, whereas the hydrogen bond in a beta pleated sheet is always going to be at right angle to the direction of the beta pleated sheet. And sometimes in 3D models of secondary structure of a protein, beta pleated sheets are represented by arrows, where the arrowhead represents the N terminal of the amino acid and the arrow's tail represents the C terminal. And alpha helix are represented by spirals. So within this picture, all the spirals that you see are examples of either alpha helix or helix, which is both a secondary structure, and the arrows are beta pleated sheet, which is another example of a secondary structure of a protein. For the secondary structure of a protein, keep in mind that the secondary structure of any protein is held in place by the presence of hydrogen bonds, which are forming between the amine group and the carboxylic acid group of the amino acids. And in order for these hydrogen bonds to exist, those amino acids need to be lying in close proximity to each other. So either by the folding of this amino acid chain, the amino acids that were further away from each other will come close together and will lie parallel to each other, or they'll actually be present probably about 2 to 3 amino acids apart. After the formation of a secondary structure, the tertiary structure of a protein comes into existence. Tertiary structure is the compact structure of a protein molecule that results from the three-dimensional coiling of the already folded chain of amino acids. These amino acid chain that was formed as a primary structure was first folded into either helixes or into beta pleated sheet due to the presence of secondary structure, and that secondary structure of the protein, when further coils into a more complex 3D structure, that structure is actually called a tertiary structure of a protein. The tertiary structure of a protein actually looks like a very tangled, disorderly fashion kind of a folded molecule. However, the folding is extremely precise and the molecules are held in very specific shapes due to various bonds that forms between different amino acids. Unlike the secondary structure, which was a result of interaction between the amine group and carboxylic acid group, tertiary structure is actually a result of interaction between different R groups or variable groups of the amino acid. This leads to 4 different kinds of bondings between the different amino acid. The first one is hydrogen bonding. The second one is disulfide bonding, where disulfide bridges form. The third is ionic bonding. And finally, the fourth one is weak hydrophobic interactions. Amongst all four of these bondings, hydrogen bond is going to form between polar groups, and a partially positive molecule is going to interact with a partially negative molecule as long as there is a hydrogen present in that partially positive or negative molecule, and there's going to be formation of hydrogen bond. The difference between this hydrogen bond and the hydrogen bond that is created in the secondary structure of a protein is that this hydrogen bond is going to form between the R groups of the amino acid, whereas the hydrogen bond that had formed in the secondary structure was forming between the main amine group and carboxylic acid group of the main polypeptide chain. Ionic bond formation, on the other hand, occurs between acidic and basic groups of amino acid. So, amino acids that are categorized as acidic and basic will be forming these ionic bonds, and it's mainly going to form between the amine groups on the R groups of those amino acid and the carboxylic acid group on the R groups of that amino acid. Both the hydrogen bond and ionic bond can easily be broken with heat and pH changes. Hydrogen bond can be broken more easily with heat and then with pH changes, whereas ionic bond will break more easily with pH changes and then heat. On our lesson on amino acid, I mentioned that the peptide bond can also break with great pH and heat changes. But note that that has to have an extreme amount of temperature change or pH change. But these bonds, be it in the secondary structure or the tertiary structure, can break even with a little temperature change and pH change. For a covalent bond to break, it has to have a lot of for example, if we're talking about peptide bond, which is a covalent bond, that peptide bond comes into existence because of a condensation reaction. And in order to break that covalent bond, that peptide bond, you need to hydrolyze that bond. Hydrolysis of that bond usually occurs with a very strong alkali or acid, and you require to heat that mixture that contains that chain of amino acid or peptide. But for this hydrogen bond or ionic bond to break, you could simply provide it with a little water bath, and the solution might contain some peptide bonds or peptide molecules, and the hydrogen and ionic bond found within the tertiary structure will break even with a little heat or slight pH changes. Third kind of very unique bond that can be found in a tertiary structure is the formation of disulfide bonds. These disulfide bonds form between two cysteine amino acids. Cysteine amino acids have sulfhydryl groups, which is this sulfur and hydrogen groups, and if these sulfhydryl groups are oxidized, they'll end up forming a disulfide bond. A disulfide bond is an example of a covalent bond, which is why they are not easy to break and are extremely strong. In order for these bonds to be broken, they need to undergo a reversal reaction. So if they were oxidized to produce the disulfide bonds, they need to be reduced back, and there needs to be an addition of hydrogen again in order to break these bonds. These cysteine bonds can easily be located on your hair if you have curly hair. So people that have curly hair usually have a lot of these disulfide bonds present between cysteine amino acid within the keratin of their hair. And a lot of times you must have heard that people undergo rebonding treatment and things of those sort, which is used to treat those curly hair and make them straight. When those hair are undergoing a straightening process through these chemical reactions, that chemical reaction is actually reducing the disulfide bonds that is present within their hair, and that is breaking this disulfide bond so that those curly hair can then be straightened. So disulfide bonds are not easy to break and requires a reducing agent in order to be broken down. Finally, weak hydrophobic interactions or weak van der Waal forces exist between two R groups that are non-polar in nature, and if those two R groups are extremely close together. These are the weakest form of bonds that can exist between the two R groups and can easily be broken down. These interactions or hydrophobic bonds are actually repelled by water. So these kind of bonds usually exist in proteins that are repelled by water and stay away from aqueous environments. Now, finally, when the protein molecule has achieved a primary, secondary, and tertiary structure, that protein will now try to achieve a quaternary structure. Whereas primary, secondary, and tertiary structures of protein are going to be found inside every single kind of protein, quaternary structure may or may not be present in a protein. Quaternary structure is the term given to the arrangement of a protein if more than one polypeptide are present in a protein molecule, or if a single polypeptide molecule is bonded to a non-protein component in a particular protein molecule. For example, in a hemoglobin molecule has 4 polypeptides. It has 2 chains of alpha globin peptide and 2 chains of beta globin peptide. So that itself makes it a quaternary protein structure. And within each polypeptide, there is a non-protein component which is called the heme group and is responsible for storing oxygen within a hemoglobin molecule. So this non-protein component, if attached to a polypeptide, will also make this structure a quaternary structure for that protein. Similarly, a molecule of collagen is made up of not one polypeptide chain but rather 3 polypeptide chain that are almost braided together to give it this fibrous looking appearance. And since it has more than one polypeptide chain, this structure will again become a quaternary structure. We'll discuss hemoglobin and collagen in greater detail when we are discussing globular and fibrous protein in our next few lessons. But for this lesson, keep in mind that any quaternary structure will be held in its position like this or like this through different bonds. Just like tertiary structure, quaternary structure also shares the same bonds as that tertiary structure did, minus the presence of a disulfide bond. So a quaternary structure will have hydrogen bonding, ionic bonding, as well as weak hydrophobic interactions depending on the R groups of the various amino acids of the different polypeptides. But regardless of the structural arrangement of any protein, every single protein that is found within a living organism is extremely important because they have both a functional role inside living organisms as well as a structural role. For structural roles, protein molecules are usually forming part of a membrane by forming membrane proteins, and it forms proteins such as keratin, which is part of skin and hair, collagen, which is making up your bones, elastin, which can also be found inside your lungs. So all these structures are actually made up of proteins. Functionally speaking, these proteins can either behave as enzymes, they can either form antibodies that are substances that are made by your immune system and helps your body fight diseases, or they can even function as hormones. So proteins have one of the most diverse kind of functions within living organisms, which is why to understand their structure and function is extremely important. To summarize this lesson, each protein has a very complex three-dimensional structure, and each protein can be divided into primary, secondary, tertiary, or quaternary structure. Primary, secondary, and tertiary structures are going to be found inside every single protein, but quaternary structure may or may not be present. Primary structure is the name given to the arrangement of amino acids, and it basically helps us understand the different kinds of amino acids that are making up a protein and the order and sequence in which those amino acids are arranged. The secondary structure takes that chain of amino acid and ends up folding that chain in the form of either a helix or a beta pleated sheet, which are held together by hydrogen bonds, which forms between the amine group and carboxylic acid group of the amino acid. The tertiary structure is the further folding of an already folded secondary structure of protein. That tertiary structure is held together by hydrogen bond, ionic bond, weak hydrophobic interactions, and disulfide bridges. Quaternary structure refers to a kind of protein that either has more than one polypeptide making up that protein or has a polypeptide that is attached to a non protein component. And with that, we successfully conclude this lesson, and we can now move on to our next lesson where we understand the difference between globular protein and fibrous protein.
Hey there! If you found this A-level biology lesson helpful, why don't you head over to altacademy.org and sign up for our full A-level biology course. In addition to biology, you could sign up for physics, chemistry, math, or 4 other A-level subjects. Thousands of students have already taken the leap. What are you waiting for? See you there.